For 40 years, the predator has been a shape in the trees, the invisible hunter that forced the mud-covered muscle of Arnold Schwarzenegger into sheer, terrified hiding back in 1987. But treating an iconic movie monster purely as an apex stalker comes with a built-in expiration date. Once the audience learns the rules of the plasmacaster and the skull trophies, keeping the antagonist as a static boogeyman eventually stalls a franchise's growth. Studios usually try to solve this by pivoting the villain into a protagonist. The risk is that humanizing a monster almost always results in softening them, draining away the very brutality that made them compelling to watch in the first place. Predator Badlands attempts the impossible inversion. It places the Yautja squarely in the protagonist's seat without compromising his lethality. He remains a brutal killer who hunts on instinct and earns his standing through blood. The film suggests that making a monster relatable isn't about shifting their morals, but about radically changing their context. To achieve this centering of the creature, the narrative alters three specific variables. The first variable to consider is anthropological world-building. When Star Trek: The Next Generation brought a Klingon onto the bridge of the Enterprise, audiences didn't need to share Worf's violent methods to respect him. They just needed to recognize his adherence to ritual combat and bloodlines. Badlands gives the Yautja that same weight. The film treats their society as a lived-in civilization built on family honor, a strict hierarchy of strength, and unforgiving ritual combat. This introduces the concept of exile. In a society entirely defined by lineage, severing his connection to his bloodline is a fate worse than death. This exile gives the outcast a heavy emotional burden, fighting to reclaim a name stripped from him. You don't have to share a hunter's bloodlust to understand his shame. Once you recognize the architecture of his honor code, you find yourself rooting for him to satisfy it. The second variable is the threat level. If you have an overpowered, invisible alien stalker as your hero, the physical world around him must become the new villain to keep the stakes high. The film finds that opposition in the planet itself. The alien world of Badlands is actively hostile, featuring terrain that kills and flora that hunts. Think about the Yautja toolkit: thermal vision, light-bending cloaks, shoulder-mounted plasmacasters. Back on Earth, these were overwhelming, unfair advantages deployed against outmatched commandos. When the entire ecosystem is trying to kill the protagonist, those high-tech weapons are recontextualized. They are no longer overpowered artillery. They are the bare minimum survival gear needed to make it through the night. By making the ecosystem overwhelmingly hostile, the narrative demotes the apex hunter to a desperate survivor. We find ourselves afraid for the monster, rather than running from him. That brings us to the third variable, which solves a mechanical storytelling problem. A director has to communicate internal growth, but the protagonist wears a mask, does not speak English, and doesn't emote like a human. The solution is introducing an android companion that the Yautja saves early in the film. Their relationship relies entirely on gesture and consequence. They build trust by saving each other and following a shared code, establishing a bond through actions rather than dialogue. The android acts as an emotional periscope. It gives the audience a recognizable lens to view the alien psychology, translating his motivations into relatable human stakes while preserving his terrifying mystique. By defining his culture, weaponizing his environment, and giving him a silent foil, Badlands anthropomorphizes the monster by making his motivations clearer, not by making his actions softer. This approach allows the film to slot into the massive, intertwined legacy of the Alien and Predator shared universe. This internal perspective succeeds where previous franchise expansions, like Prometheus, stumbled. It explores an ancient civilization through the lens of one personal quest for honor, rather than getting lost in grand philosophical origins. Establishing this internal culture provides the franchise with a broader narrative scope. Future installments can now draw from Yautja history, social hierarchies, and internal politics to drive new stories. The relationship between the audience and the character has shifted. The tension is no longer about how to survive the monster, but where this complex warrior goes next.